valuable material too. So the sooner we get started, the better. So welcome everybody. I'm Rob Belcher. I'm the lead at the Small Business Enterprise Center, or the St. Catharines Enterprise Center as we're more commonly known. A Small Business Enterprise Center is part of a network of 47 offices across Ontario. In St. Catharines, we're employees of the City of St. Catharines, but that network that I mentioned is inclusive of 47 offices that are funded by the province of Ontario. So in most cases, like our case in St. Catharines, the province, the Ministry of Economic Development, gives the city some funding, and then people like myself and Adrienne on our team deliver webinars or seminars, one-to-one consulting, information requests. We're here to help in a variety of different ways. Our goal is to help small business owners to succeed. We're really good generalists, and then we bring in experts like Randy to round out or go a little beyond maybe our knowledge base. So that's just us in a nutshell. And if anybody does have any questions afterwards, or they want to arrange a one-to-one chat, Adrienne and I, our schedules this week are pretty full, but we could always have a follow-up chat with somebody sometime next week, just to help you out. And I'm sure Randy will tell you a little bit about how and when you might use his services as well. So I'd like to turn it over to Randy. He has a lot of great material. We've had him guest speak in our office in the past, and I know I personally learned quite a bit from him, and many of our clients said, when can he come back? So it's long overdue, Randy. Thanks for coming back to join us. Can you and I have known each other, and I take it for granted, for at least 5 years, probably closer to 10. And,
right.
Yeah. So we both met in previous jobs when I worked for the city of Hamilton, and you were at Innovation Factory at the time.
Right. Yep.
But now you've joined Venture Accelerators.
Yes. So
yeah.
I'll jump into that. Maybe I'll just hit the share screen button.
Perfect.
And let's go with technology here, and I'll just hit from the beginning. I'll pop in and out of the presentation mode from my slide deck once or twice, but I see we're on screen, so this is great. Yeah, so maybe just as a couple of people come in, before I give a full introduction, maybe just something to think about. Have you tried any alternative sales and marketing strategies the last 6 weeks? Have you done anything differently? Have you went to someone's front window and knocked on it and waved at them to try to get their attention and buy something from you? I know that I sometimes sell things on and buy things on Facebook, on the Facebook Marketplace, and I've noticed that I can advertise front porch delivery, and I leave something at the front porch, and somebody e-transfers me, and it goes smoothly. So that was a little a shift or change in my business model, in my little side project of selling a few things on Facebook. But if there's something that that you're doing that's working, put it in the chat box, and then we'll look into that, or Rob will mention a few of those things later. I don't see that on my screen when I'm sharing, but I'm sure Rob can share a little bit afterwards too on that.
Yeah, a couple comments have come in. Free online services from one individual, and another is quite honest, saying just too busy navigating all the COVID-19 protocol.
Sure.
I know one entrepreneur we spoke with hadn't set up a website just yet, and but they're able to sell food at their business. They're in Niagara on the Lake, and they basically, husband and wife, spent a solid, they say, 15 hours taking pictures of every product that they have, tagging it, uploading it to their website, so that people could shop online, or at least browse online. So it's nice to see stories like that, and I hope a few other people maybe share and answer your poll in the chat box.
Yeah. So it's doing the work and being as flexible as you can while you're doing that, right? So great. So as Robin mentioned, my name is Randy Hendriks. I work for a company called the VA Partners, and what I'd like to do today is mention a few of the trends of what's happening right now based on COVID, based on kind of the new landscape in a sense. Let's look at different frameworks based on that. And then I like to spend a good chunk of the time on some digital tools that you can use in the sales process, and then have a bit of time for discussion and Q&A as well. So I had to find a new graphic logo for my handshake there, since we're not allowed to actually handshake, and well, we're not in person anyway, so it's not an issue. But so I asked that question, and we got a couple pieces of feedback already. Quick background on me. So I met and connected with Rob when I worked at Innovation Factory, which is a regional innovation center similar to Innovate Niagara, which is in St. Catharines. And before that, I was working in the not-for-profit space. I had created my own platform for selling fair trade and social impact products. What I found is that I just couldn't scale up my program fast enough to make it an ongoing project that would work for myself. But I got involved in Innovation Factory, got connected with a lot of startups, and helped them through creating their value proposition, clarifying what was the pieces of their sales and marketing process. And then through that, connected with the company I work with now, VA Partners, where we do part-time or outsourced sales and marketing support for B2B companies. Mainly in the technology space. We do some work with professional services. I'll probably share a few examples. And I know companies that are, and people that are here on the call today probably range from some B2B companies, business to business, that is, business to consumer, kind of straightforward retail. Maybe there's some people that are maybe in the nonprofit space as well. So a variety of people. I'll try to speak to those different experiences, but just to tell you that my background and what I've been doing the last number of years is more in the B2B space. So just a quick kind of hits on some trends of what's happening. This is kind of stating the obvious, I guess, but McKinsey and Company is a large international research company, and they had done some research and polling recently, identifying that 90% of sales has moved to remote and digital, and 50% of people believe this is as good or more effective than traditional approaches. So people are seeing the value in it. Even just a day or two ago, I think Twitter announced that in their offices, they're going to give all of their, or almost all their employees the option of continuing to work from home. They've realized that we're not slackers when we work from home. We get our work done. We have targets, and we address them. So it's definitely a shift that will continue, both the remote aspect and shifting towards digital. So the takeaway from that is basically that this is a growing expectation. People want to be able to engage in that digital space, but they also want to, not in a disconnected way, but in a way that's still imminent. That's not disconnected, but that's, I don't want to say face to face, but they want to have that experience of intimacy and connection as well, even in the midst of that sales process. So based on that, we need to think strategically. What's the framework? What tools are we going to use, and what will that look like? From the standpoint of being organized, how are we going to organize the digital tools we have? When I was growing up, my dad's workshop looked basically like this picture here. Everything was neat and organized and in place. He would be doing the work around the house, and he would tell me to get the Phillips screwdriver, and eventually I knew what the Phillips screwdriver was, and I would get it because I knew where it was and I could do it. When I do projects sometimes around my house, it looks a bit more like this, my workshop. We put together a playground in the backyard recently, and I realized that the more organized I am with my tools, the faster and more efficiently I'm going to be able to work through that, 42-page instructional manual of how to put things together. So, so we want to think about that today, of what are the digital tools we're using? How do we stay organized to be able to leverage them effectively? this is, it's got a lot on this graphic here, but we call this the buyer journey. And we really want to think about that idea of, we might have a sales and marketing process in place. We might have ideas of how we're going to engage people and connect with them and make our sale. But we really want to think about the journey that our buyer is on, and think about the journey and how it might have changed over the last 2 months. Um, I have an example from the standpoint of a purchase I made recently. I got downstairs in the basement on Monday morning, realized that there was a leak in the basement, and the washer was broken. So normally when something like that happens, I will go to Home Depot, and I'll kind of mill around there and kick the tires a little bit, look inside the different washers and dryers or whatever. But that wasn't as much of an option. The Home Depot had just opened, I think, a day or two before, but I didn't want to go in there in the midst of everything. So I basically, had a bit of a different process. I went through the awareness of knowing that there was a government rebate on for 25% off. I went on to Facebook because I was going to look to see, do I want to buy an almost new one, or am I going to buy a brand new one? When I was on there, an ad came up from Tasco, from this place that sounded vaguely familiar. So I clicked on their ad, went to their website. Once I was on the website, I saw the prices, found the phone number, and I called in. And once I called, I heard the jingle that was from the radio commercial that I knew was in the back of my mind before. So I talked to the salesperson. He emailed me a quote. I followed up with him, made another phone call, and the deal was done. So that was my buyer journey, from going from, if we look on the screen here, in business wording, identifying the problem. I did my online research. I explored solutions. I found the vendor from Tasco. I determined that I was going to make a phone call to find if he had a better price than what was online. He got put on the short list, and had a conversation with my wife, and the decision was made. So that's a buyer journey for me that would have changed a little bit from just going to the Home Depot, looking around and buying. So I'd like you to kind of think about that for yourselves, not just what your process is of how you want or think that the buyer journey should be, but what their actual steps are that they're taking. And why that's important is because depending on the kind of product that you have, if it's a business-to-business product, if it's a kind of a larger sale, let's say it's a sale that's $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 sale, or if it's professional consulting, for instance, that might be an inbound process where you're looking for people to see you somewhere, just like I heard the radio ad. And then I considered, as I was on Facebook, and I saw the next ad on their Facebook ad, and then I did the action of making the purchase. And even the loyalty step is, once I've been I'm telling you guys about it, so I'm already a loyal customer of Tasco, and my washer hasn't even shown up yet. But we want to think about the sales process and how people are stepping from those different stages. So they see you somewhere on social. Are they going to step to take an action to go to your website? The website is going to lead to another action of making a purchase. But these things, we want to be strategic in how we help them through those steps.
These are, if I may, these are great points, Randy. I think too many people don't think about, they think about their process, like the prior slide. And I think people but they don't think about the journey that a customer goes on. And I think people think about, yeah, I need to raise awareness. I need them to want me. The action part, I love the line about changing people's behavior. Too many small businesses I meet at the startup phase just think, oh, I just have to capture 1% of the market and I'm going to be great. Well, they still have to change that 1% of the market's behavior, right? So I'm glad you're talking about this. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, so we're changing behavior. We're asking them to take a step, but that step often needs a trigger of some kind. You know, it's or sometimes we'll call it a call to action. So those are what some of the digital tools that I'll go through are about, moving those steps. Now, if you're in a B2B business, where you're doing more outbound, then there's a different set of steps that you're taking. Your buyer's journey is a little bit different. Um, and the steps that you have to take are a little bit different. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. I was working with one client that does work truck fleet leasing, and so first I did my prospecting. I identified, about 30 municipalities and governments in the area. I did a cold email. Somebody responded. Great. I had a phone call with them of this local municipality and lined up a meeting. Drove out through Niagara to get to that meeting, and great. He gave me a list of the trucks that he needed. Put the proposal together. So I would think that my work is 90% done in that first 3 weeks of the process, but in reality, oh, we have to wait for the municipal budget to come out. So give it another few months, and then well, actually, there was an election so we have a new town council. So now we have to wait do another step. And meantime, I need to make sure I'm keeping that contact warm and adjusting to their needs. It's no sense of me trying to push through my plan and my timelines. I need to adjust to my buyer's timeline. So going through a long process of the RFP, request for proposal, get a new proposal confirmations. This might have been, I think, about a 16 or 18th month process to close that first sale. Now, after the first sale is closed, I have that customer, and then I check in with them every 3 months. But and then new business gets easier to do. Sell the next 3 or 4 trucks because we've first put that process in place. But it can be a long process, and we have to really think through the eyes of our buyer. So what I want to do today is just look at some tools in relation to some of those steps. This doesn't, this little graphic here, it doesn't outline the exact kind of buyer journey, but it's some of the, it's a way that I was able to group the tools into a kind of a way for them for us to reflect on them and look at them today. So really we want to leverage the digital tools to help us to align ourselves with our buyer and to make a sale. So the first set of tools is around research. So to know who your buyers are and how to reach them. So what I'm going to do in each one of these kind of sections is I'll show you that list on the right. I'll talk about some of these tools, and then I'll either go through a couple slides or maybe I'll jump in live to an area to look at here. So, and this is where I'm going to just go live into a couple websites in a moment. But one of the things that I really like to leverage is LinkedIn for my business network and just business contacts, community contacts. It can be the same as, it's similar to Facebook in the way that the feed is set up and you can engage with people, but it's an opportunity to show yourself as a thought leader. You can provide content, you can engage with people, you can see what's going on in the space. And there's a few other tools that are listed there that I'll go into in relation to that. Another tool that can be handy, and this is where you have to find the balance between the DIY approach of certain aspects of research or of the other things I'll talk about, and finding a third-party person. So a site like Freelancer, freelancer.com, is where you can find someone that, for $100 or for $200, they'll do some research for you. They'll create a list for you of contacts. But I find it's best to try to do it yourself first, know what you're getting into, rather than farming it out to somebody else. Because if you've done it yourself first, if you're entrepreneur, you're in a small startup, you want to be able to know the process a little bit, even if later on in a year or two from now, you're going to be delegating that to somebody else. The more you know about some of those processes, the better. And if you're need to do market research, a great tool is something like SurveyMonkey, where you want to get feedback from your friends and family, your network. You can send out a link, and people can give you a response, and you can collect data, because that's a really important piece as you're building out your offering or your product, is to know that there's a right fit between you, between your offering and what people actually want or need. So a tool like SurveyMonkey can be really, really handy for that. So I'm going to jump into to LinkedIn for a second.
Get a sneak peek into Randy's LinkedIn.
There you go. Yes. So so LinkedIn is great. It has a feed just like Facebook when you go to the home screen, and I can see what people are doing in my network. I can I can comment. I can identify, oh, here's one of our clients, and she's talking about a resource or a tool that she's using. So I've put a like on that, or I've mentioned that that was an insightful comment. So I'm staying engaged with my clients. I'm seeing what else is going on in my network. The notifications tab, if I've been commenting or posting, if somebody else has commented on mine, I'll see it here. So I put out a call yesterday. Hey, anybody know any good digital tools that I need to mention at my webinar tomorrow? And so Ashley here and Chris are commenting and giving feedback to me. So I'm going to kind of follow up and thank them for their comments. As far as the research side, one of the greatest tools is your network. So I've built this up over time, but I have about 1,200 first connections. These are people that just like on Facebook, I've made a connection with them, and because I've made that connection with them, I have a connection to them and to their contacts. So it's like 6 degrees of separation. You can be networking connected with thousands or millions of people. So why this is great is that if I want to search something on my network, I can have a look for, say for instance, I'm looking for one of my clients. They do invoice financing, which is a great tool for companies. So I want to know who in my network is in the financial space that maybe I can have a conversation about this tool. So I can type in finance, but I get 19 million results, which is great, but that's probably too wide of a net to cast when I'm trying to reach out to people. So I can look at connections, and I can pick my first level connections. Those are people that, like my Facebook friends, my 1,000 people that I have a LinkedIn connection with. Say, which of those people are in the finance space? Well, I get 175 results, but some of these people are in Ireland and some of these people are further away. So I'm going to add another filter to my location to say just people in Ontario. So once I've applied that, I can see that I have, oh, it's loading up. Try that again. The people in Ontario are frozen out. So once I click on that, I would get more specific results. So now I have 23 results, and so now I remind myself, oh yeah, Cecilia there from Flow CPA. I need to have a conversation with her, so I'm going to message her and I'm going to ask her for a Zoom call to talk to her about this. Or Tony from this insurance group would be a good fit for me informing him. So it's a great way for me to do the research. I can also do research of, let's say, more cold connections where it's not just my first level of connections, but people that are a bit further removed. And when I do that, sometimes I'll also use another tool called Get Prospect. And what it allows me to do is basically search my prospects and find their email addresses. So that can be really handy. And once it searches them, it'll pop them out into another website where once I've ran the search, it pulls all this information about them, their title, their company. Yep.
Yeah, just is this a paid subscription for Get Prospect then? Is this a paid
So
tool?
yeah, so that's a great question. So Get Prospect, and I'll try to mention it when I'm using a paid or unpaid tool. It's a free tool for a certain amount of searches per month. So you might be able to identify 100 email addresses per month for free. But if you're doing a bulk research on 1,000 contacts, then you're going to need to pay about $60 a month for a subscription. And similar to that, um, beyond LinkedIn, you have something called LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And what that helps me to do, if I'm using the Sales Navigator feature, is I can get a little bit more focused on my contacts. So you can see here, I can list Greater St. Catharines, Niagara. I've never heard it called a metropolitan area before, but I can search through the Greater St. Catharines, Niagara metropolitan area and see which contacts are in finance, and it kind of focuses down to 7 people. So that's a handy tool for me. It has a few more functions. I can search by the size of a company. Oftentimes when I'm working with a client, we'll know the target companies we're looking for. Hey, we don't want companies that are larger than a 10-person company. So I can focus, or we only want companies over a certain size. And the staff number or company headcount is a great way to use that tool as a search. Another cool search tool that is a free plugin for a certain amount of um, searches per month is something called Snove.io, which is basically once you have this plugin attached, I can go to any website like vapartners.ca, my company website. I hit this button and it will list out, let's see here, all of the email addresses connected to that company's website. So it's a great way if I know that somebody is working for Investors Group, I'm going to go to Investors Group website, I'm going to click on it, and even if I didn't find that person, I'd be able to tell, well, they all seem to start with the first letter of their first name and then their full last name. So I can make a pretty educated guess that that's the way that the person's email address is going to be that I can reach out to. So that's just a real great way to be doing some of that prospecting to identify your targets and start reaching out to them. Rob, any other ways that you used LinkedIn?
Well, actually, I was just reading a question that came through on
Okay.
LinkedIn,
Yep.
and somebody was curious if LinkedIn has any live video meeting capabilities, like say Google Hangouts would, or Google would have, or Skype.
I haven't seen that on
Same.
on LinkedIn, but um, I just leveraged other tools for
Okay,
that piece.
that's what I thought. Yeah, Skype or Zoom, like we're on right now, or Google has a good one. But yeah, as to how LinkedIn, I just know many people just think of it as a where to look for a job, but there's a number of business to business professionals that are using it as their primary marketing activity.
Yep, I'd be one of those people. I'm on there, 3 or 4 times a day, skimming through and checking on things. So the second area, yeah, I won't spend a lot of time on this collaboration feature, but you can use tools like Google Drive or Dropbox for sharing files. It's really important. Trello or Slack for communicating within your organization. But my suggestion would be, if your organization is a small, 1 or 2 person, just do what fits and works for your team. And we'll give a shout out to this one tool. It's called Obi, and they're from a company based in Hamilton, and they basically are like an add-in to a Slack channel. So Slack is a tool for teams to communicate and share information, and Obi basically automates some processes of gathering information. So I can ask questions like, who's the best dressed at a VA Partners? And Obi will say, what did he say? Randy, that guy is the complete package. So perfect. Obi knows his stuff, But I would my suggestion around collaboration tools is, don't overthink it, but just make sure that the tools are supporting you in if you're noticing that where are you getting bogged down in in sharing information, and look at what resources you can use to help you in that. This next element is around management. So how are you keeping track of your potential buyers and opportunities? You can use a number of different CRMs. CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management, or Constituent Relationship Management if you're working in the nonprofit space. And there are huge companies out there like Salesforce that has been around a long time. And I've used Salesforce. It's a little bit more than any startup that has less than 100 or 200 people need to fulfill the tasks around keeping track of your contacts and companies that you're working with. Another tool that I found really interesting is called Streak, and it's like an add-on or a Chrome plugin inside of your Gmail. So you don't have to leave, if you're using Gmail or G Suite, you don't have to leave Gmail to be able to keep track of different contacts, companies, deals, opportunities, and it has some cool automated email functions as well. But the tool I've used with about 90% of our clients and that we use with VA partners is called HubSpot. And HubSpot started out as a basically an email marketing tool, and it morphed into, or it added functionality of the CRM system. So let's see, how am I doing here? Yeah, I'll just go through on the screen here a couple of things that you'll see when you log into HubSpot. So think of HubSpot as that place where you're keeping track of the contacts that you've ran into, the companies that they're connected to, the emails, the phone numbers, and just to tell you, everything here that I'm showing you on HubSpot is free. They have some add-on features, but the basics of what you can do with HubSpot, you can do with a free subscription. If you are trying to keep a track of tasks, it can be very handy. Basically, what I'm able to do is, when I log into HubSpot, I see in my activity feed who's opened my emails, how many times they've opened it, so I can be aware of that. I can create a task list, or whenever I'm working on an account, I want to create a future task towards that company. Because if I don't create a task toward it, I may just forget about it. So by creating that future task, I'll know that when I open up and create my task list to look at it, and I'll say, oh, I need to follow up with Dave. I need to check in with Chris. I need to email Emil. And when I have that time set aside for that, I just start working through my tasks one by one. What's nice about the HubSpot manager is that once I click on that account, I can open up the person's account. I can start an email, and I can create an email from a template, or I can create an email from scratch, and I can send the email right out of HubSpot. So the HubSpot has integrations into Gmail. It has integrations into Microsoft, and even just regular kind of IMAP if you're using, Bell or Simpatico or whatever those ones are. You can even integrate there. So what that means is that you can keep all your information in that one place. Your notes on the call that you had with them, the next steps to follow up, the tasks you need to do. So it's a great repository of information. You just have to be, you have to train yourself to be consistent in loading the information in. But the way it's set up now, it kind of becomes my workstation of, I'm not simply transferring information, but that's where the information is originating, because when I'm on the phone call, I find the number in HubSpot, I make the call, and as I'm making the phone call, I open up my notes box, and I keep the notes from that call in there. So it's a really great resource, and it it helps you kind of not lose track of deals or opportunities. Because somebody might say to you, COVID is killing me right now. Call me back in 3 months. Okay, am I going to make a mental note of that? Am I going to email myself? There are a few other ways that you can do it, but I love the ease of just creating tasks and doing it that way. There are a few other functions that you can follow. You can also create deals. So if there's a large opportunity that you want to have some extra kind of view on, or sometimes if you have a sales team, you can kind of do a review of the opportunities that you have going. There's a deal function. And then there's a whole other marketing side where you can create marketing automation through HubSpot, which is very handy too. I think if you are, there is a fee that if you're up to say, not sure if it's up to 500 contacts for free, and then if you're beyond that, there's a cost to it. But I know that we're switching over from another tool into HubSpot so that everything is kind of integrated into the same place. So that's a really important element, though, is using a CRM for those pieces. So we're motoring along here, Rob. Any I just want to pause for a second if there are any thoughts or questions or ideas.
I just sent a chat in the chat box. I just said, is everybody good so far? A few responses saying all is good. And actually high praise from a fellow presenter saying that you're an excellent presenter, good depth of working knowledge. So you're bang on. And I will just caution, we're about 25 minutes before 2 o'clock too. So I just want to make sure that we get through there's time to stay past that, but just in case people have to go, we'll try to be mindful of that. So, yeah, doing great so far. Thank you.
Okay, just want to get the pulse a little bit. So,
yeah,
I don't get to see the faces like if I was doing a live presentation, whether people are nodding their heads down to their desks or whatever. So, so this next element, create, is basically when we think back to that buyer journey. We want to be able to create the elements that are helping people to take those steps through the seeing, the thinking, the doing, the caring. So some of that might come through the website that you build. Some of it might come through the infographics that you use or create. Or if you're using advanced tools like Adobe Creative Cloud, you can use PowerPoint, or Google Slides is really good as well. I'll just show you Canva is a really neat site, and basically it helps you to create graphics of all kinds. So when I wanted to create a little graphic for the presentation today, what I did is I went into Canva, I looked at their templates. There was one on hair donation guidelines. So I thought, yeah, this is perfect, So I just basically took that template, I removed all their text, I added mine in, I changed the font a little bit, and in 15 minutes I was able to create this graphic that, I'm not a graphic artist, but it looks good enough for a presentation that I can engage people with and they have something to look at. So I really encourage you to use a tool like Canva. Again, it's a free tool for they have certain amount of templates that you can use for free, and then there's advanced features and extras for extra cost. But I find it's a great tool. I won't spend a lot of time on website design, but just to say that, you could use something like Squarespace, where you're paying a monthly fee, or Shopify as well, I believe, has a monthly fee that you're basically, they're loaning you their platform and you're kind of building it out. Especially if you're really e-commerce focused, you might want to use Shopify. And if you're handy with doing a bit of graphic stuff or design or coding yourself, you might want to dabble into to WordPress. I found that I've built a few sites on WordPress where I was hoping to use the freelancer idea and contract someone to do it, and basically I ended up taking over the project and doing it myself. But through that I learned a lot, and the next time I contract someone to build a website or work with a team member, I have a better understanding. So as an entrepreneur, it helps to have a bit of that understanding the background. So this is what a WordPress page can look like from the back end. You don't have to be writing in code or using you know, but there is an element of um, uh, learning and growing into it that takes a little longer than others. So you want to build and create kind of items, and yeah, I had a list of things, you know, like just going back to the create slide for a second, you know, it can be anything from, you know, infographics, blog posts, web pages, order forms, and you know, all those elements. You want to be thinking about how am I creating these digital tools that will move people through those steps in the buying process. And yeah, so I just wanted to mention that as well. Going into engagement, this is where you know, you have your website, you have your social media platform kind of set up. How are you going to use it to engage people to take that next step? Again, it's not always just to make somebody buy something. It's how do you make them aware first? How do you move them from just hearing the commercial to going to the website to making the purchase? So um, um, I have a bunch of social media icons. I'm not going to go into all the platforms, but just to say, you want to be picking the platform where your audience is. I guess that's obvious. So, you know, I talk about LinkedIn as a B2B place. It's great. If your target market is, you know, let's say over 40 or so, maybe you're on Facebook. If it's under 40, maybe you're on Instagram. If they're under 20, it's on 3 or 4 platforms I've never heard of before, because, you know, none of us know what they are yet. But that's the challenge sometimes. But know where your buyer is and insinuate yourselves into the conversations, I like to say. You know, when I go to networking events, I can just kind of lean over and see 4 people talking, and I can kind of butt myself into the circle and start talking to them. On social, the way you can do that is by using something like Hootsuite. Hootsuite, again, is a free tool for preliminary usage of it. And basically what it does is it helps people to um, hear and listen on different social media platforms and create content. So on this screenshot that I have here, I can list on one panel, I can list, you know, here are what I've tweeted recently. Here's where people have mentioned something of, you know, my name or one of my, you know, one of my clients and what they're doing. Or if I want to keep track of like a hashtag, maybe it's if I was working in Hamilton, it would be Hamont. You know, what's the St. Catharines hashtag?
There's a
Is
couple.
there?
We use our home STC or invest STC.
Yeah. So I can put invest STC and I'll see everything going on, and it kind of helps me to be like the concierge of all this all these different posts and listening, and then repost and reshare and schedule content. So it's a real great way to manage kind of social media on a few different channels. Now, this little page here lists out, you know, you can manage your Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, Pinterest. These all have integrations into Hootsuite and others as well, but it's a pretty good list there. So
Fabulous.
I really encourage you to use something like that to be able to schedule and plan out things, so it's not just, you know, you post 10 things one day and then there's a desert for 2 weeks. So I can go on and spend 2 hours and schedule out 14 or 20 posts that'll go out over a month, and people think, well, Randy's on LinkedIn or he's on social all the time. No, I'm just planning ahead in posting. Another cool tool is chat bots. You'll see those a lot on websites now, where this is where I was mentioning before about that direct engagement, almost like that face-to-face engagement, where you can be live. There's live chat bots where you can be available for your customers, or you can use something like Drift, where it's a combination of an automated process. So when you get onto the website, you might be asked a question about, you know, what are your needs today? Are they this or this? And it's a way for them to pre-qualify you and to either just get you the information you need without a human interaction, or to to qualify you to say this person is not worth having a human speak to because sorry, but we're only looking for companies that are 100 people or bigger, and this person said he's from a smaller company, so we're not going to dedicate any human chat with them. So it could be something, but something to think about though is that if you have live chat on your site, you need to be available to chat live. So there's nothing worse than somebody having a chat bot and you type into it and then there's no response, and then you're waiting, and then you say, screw it, I'm not interested in this company. They're not even attentive to me. So the challenge with the automated chat bots is that the prices can get pretty steep. So Drift is interesting. On the live chat side, there's I don't have a good list or resource for you, but it's something to think about if that's especially if you have an online platform to be able to engage your potential customers. And another really important way is through email. So you want to be that's an important trigger step or step in the see, think, do, care process is collecting someone's email address so that you can engage them at a later time. And then using something like MailChimp or HubSpot, as I mentioned before, as a way to design a nice looking engaging email, or it could be just straight text email. And what I find the greatest part about sending out emails like this is that yes, you can get email responses from people, but you can also get the analytics on that engagement. So I can see, this is one that I did a number of years ago, but I can see, okay, my open rate was 39%, which is good. But my favorite is to see who opened it and how many times. So even though Shannon didn't respond, she had 63 opens. So that probably means that she may have shared it with other people on her team and they opened it. So when I think of having, I have 45 minutes to do some follow-up calls and I have 800 people on my list, well, I'm going to start with the 10 people that open my email 10 times or more, because that's a trigger. It's a sign that they are the most interested in what I'm offering. So that's another kind of trigger or an action step that people can take when we think back to this sales process of, hey, they went from seeing something on the website or in the email to thinking about it. They took that step of opening the email. So it's a trigger that reminds me to engage with them. Getting towards the end now, this part is going to be a little bit quicker, just talking about executing, direct connect. I think everyone knows Zoom because we're on Zoom right now. I love Google Hangouts. It integrates really well with Gmail, which I use for most of my email and engagement. Skype can be great too. One of the things that I did, I was in Mexico about a year and a half ago, spending a few weeks with my wife and her family down in Mexico, and but I wanted to work from Mexico for a week. So what I did was on Skype, you can get a local American phone number. So I can be on Skype dialing from my Skype app in my phone or dialing from my computer. But when I'm dialing out, it's not going to have this weird international number that people aren't going to want to respond to. So that was just a little thing that worked well for me in that situation. And of course, there's the telephone, and you know how cold calling works all the time, right? It's funny because I do a fair amount of cold calling, but I'd like to do warm calling where there's some kind of trigger that tells me that this person is ripe for a call. They have opened my email, so now I'm going to follow up with them. And it's funny, sometimes people will say something like, "Randy, your timing on that call was perfect," and I think to myself, well, I actually called this person 7 times, but this time they answered the phone, or this time they wanted to talk to me. And so when you can follow the steps and when you can use the sales triggers that your buyer is showing some interest, then cold calling can definitely be a bit more effective. So that's on execution or calling. I didn't mention one other little tool on here. Sorry to jump back like that, but is Calendly. If you have if you're in a situation or you're in a sales kind of situation where you need to book meetings with people, um, Calendly is just a little plugin that you can add onto your website or into your emails, so that a person can click on it and then they can see when your availability is. So it works a lot better than the 7 emails that you have to go back and forth on sometimes. Say, is this good for you? Is it good for you? Is it good for you? And Calendly is a way that you can make yourself available to people, and it decreases the friction in trying to make connections happen. So I would suggest, if you can, to use something like that. And stand, take a breath for a second. I've been talking fast here for a
What?
while.
Come on, Randy. No breathing.
Um, the last thing that I have on my list here is analyze. So if you're thinking about the buyer journey, if you're thinking about helping them move through those steps towards a purchase, um, it's important to know what's working and what isn't. Otherwise, you're kind of in the dark, and you can just keep plowing through and still using the same methods that you're not sure if they're effective or not. So a couple things important to use. And I would say I'm the uh, least skilled, or I'm not an expert in some of these areas. Sometimes with the VA partners teams, we have an internal person that does the marketing analytics, and so I'll show you the Google Analytics page, but I can't break down all the pieces of it. But Google Analytics for your website is a plugin that you can add to it that comes standard on anything like WordPress or other sites as well. But it can tell you things like where people are bouncing or where they're leaving your page, how long they're staying on, what pages are really engaging your readers, where are people arriving from if you have a number of social media channels. So um, Google Analytics for things like this is important. You know, are your sessions of people, are they growing? What's going on with new users? So these are important elements that that you want to be looking at in relation to the work that you're doing on your website. Another tool that's really cool that does have a cost to it is called Moz, and that's where, if you're spending a lot of time, say for instance, creating content on your site, creating blog posts, um, you'd want to use something that helps you to have the right strategy around the keywords that you're using. You want to be able to see, how am I rating for these keywords? If I'm a ski jacket company, and if I'm rating 27, that means that I'm on the 3rd page of results for ski jackets. When's the last time that when you search for something, you went through 3 pages of results? Probably not very often. It's usually the first 5 results that are going to engage you. So Moz has some cool tools around that, and around um, kind of helping you fine tune your website so you have, you don't have dead links or other issues. And you can even research your competitors and see, okay, what words are they ranking for? And it gives you some ideas of keywords that you want to put into your white papers or your blog posts or your different things on your website. So that's an important tool. Um, Crazy Egg was one that was on that list as well. That's one where you can, it's like a heat sensor. You can tell where people are going on the page, where they're getting lost, so you can make adjustments to your website. Um, I, I'm going to move to the takeaway and ask these questions for you. We'll have a Q&A in a second, but these are just as I've gone through this list, and just to kind of be in review again. So, we can use tools to research, to find out who our customer is and where they are. Tools for collaboration with your team. You do want to use something to be able to keep track of your customers beyond just a spreadsheet, something that will engage you and remind you to be following up with important leads. There are tools out there for creating good content, for engaging your customers, or moving them and seeing that those triggers are being they're stepping through those triggers, and executing, and then in the end, analyzing what you have done. So in light of that, my challenge for you today, I guess, is to think about one, what has changed in your buyer's journey? So if your buyer was doing things one way, since COVID, are they doing it another way? And have your tools and approach changed to adapt to that? So that's one kind of reflection question for you as you move forward. Another takeaway or challenge for you is to explore a new tool. Maybe one of the tools of the 47 that I mentioned, try it out. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile, set that up. If you're not managing your social media in any way, try using a tool like either Buffer or Hootsuite. And the third takeaway or challenge is connect with me on LinkedIn. Hop on there, track me down, put my name in, and find me. So I'd be happy to connect with you that way. I think that's my spiel for today. I'll turn it over to Rob to handle manage some questions or comments or ideas.
Absolutely. And just to remind everybody, there's a Q&A or a chat area. I can see both quite easily. And Randy, two questions have come in. One was while you're talking about, just after you spoke about Calendly.
Mm-hmm.
So the person is asking, can you add Calendly to your MailChimp newsletter as a link?
I think so. I think I haven't used it as much because I'm managing, 3 or 4 different email addresses, and so it gets a little complicated. But I've seen it on the on people's tagline and in their signature. So I would think that you just need the URL code to be able to kind of pop it into the bottom of your MailChimp. Should be fine.
Right. I feel like I've seen it in a MailChimp mail out before. The other question was from somebody just sent in was that you've mentioned that you work for businesses doing sales. Can you explain a little bit about that? I think the person
Sure.
might be wondering who you work with and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so quick kind of a backgrounder. So VA Partners, we provide outsourced sales for B2B and growing companies. So what does that look like? So typically what happens is a company will hire us to basically be their sales team. And so what we do is we work a certain hours per month on behalf of that client. So in any given month, I might be working with 4 or 5 different clients. So for instance, right now, one of my clients is I didn't mention the tool, but is a G Suite tool for sharing contacts. And so they've tasked me with reaching out to more enterprise or larger accounts. They have an inbound process for just people that are finding them on the internet, but I'm researching contacts, researching partners, and going through that process. And so so my sales consists in doing all the things I kind of talked about today, doing the prospecting, doing the outbound, making those cold calls. And basically what will happen is I'm not the subject matter expert of that tool. So I'll bring in somebody from their internal team that can speak to the technical elements, or we've worked with I worked with another company that does printed circuit boards. And so I have, a lot of post high school education, but I have no education in electronics and printed circuit boards. So we create this fast start plan, which gives me the kind of the quick hits and the ability to answer common objections or questions that come up. But I bring in their technical person to answer the very technical questions that can come up in those situations. So
Very
yeah,
cool.
so if there's something that could be a fit, or can we help with anyone, I'm happy to help, or even just have a conversation, give some feedback on a specific tool or a challenge that someone's having. Happy to volunteer some time as well.
Oh, thanks, Randy. That's very generous. There is another question. Yeah, I'll give my perspective on it because I do work for, I'd say, a medium-sized company with the city of St. Catharines with 900 employees. But the question is, do large or even mid-sized companies IT departments allow for Skype and Zoom inside their offices, or do they block these tools? My experience working for City of Hamilton, now City of St. Catharines, there's very strong protocols from IT, and you need their vetting and blessing, if you will, before you're allowed to use these types of tools. But at the City of St. Catharines, we do use Skype and Zoom quite a bit. But I was invited to a Microsoft Teams call with somebody from Brock University, and couldn't get on. It was just, for whatever reason, it was blocked by, or it wasn't approved or set up by IT, so I couldn't get into this Microsoft Teams call, which is very much like this. So we had to revert to me calling into the meeting on my phone. So is that your experience too, Randy? It depends on it really
Yeah.
depends on the IT department.
Yep. I would say that the larger the organization, the more rules, protocols, and stringent they are. Even sometimes when I'm selling a technology, even though it's a technology, I don't always sell to the IT person because it's in their interest to keep things the status quo. So what I found is that on the sales side, we're often talking to the person that's experiencing the pain. Maybe it's a sales manager that wants to use a tool. So I'd rather talk to the sales manager, get them on board first, and tell the IT person, this is what we're going to use now. And they adjust and adapt to it versus using them as an entry point. But to answer your question, yes, I would say it is important to with certain tools to check with IT to see if it's working, but at the same time, you know, try to experiment and push the envelope a little bit with using tools that are going to work for you, and then you can become the champion in your organization to kind of share that with others as you use them and have success.
Great. Randy, I think somebody's they wanted to know about impactstore.ca. We saw it very early in your presentation. What was impactstore.ca?
Yeah, so Impact Store was an online platform where I was selling fair trade and social impact products. So, for instance, we had Grimsby, Lincoln, and West Lincoln Community Living. I think they had something called Well Preserved Jams, and so what I was doing was I would purchase jams from them and sell them on my platform. We had honey from Africa that had this, special story of helping kind of local farmers there. We had jewelry from Guatemala these women would make in their communities, and so I was collecting these different kind of feel good products that had a story behind them and putting them on a platform. And the other piece of that was that I was leveraging school groups to use that platform. So instead of somebody, a school group selling chocolate bars or a hockey team selling, just Boston pizza coupons, we were going to do something that they could still fundraise and make money with, but would create a good for the end product provider, but also be a fundraiser for them. So I was in the midst of doing that, and some of the lessons I learned from that is that you have to be selling before the product is finished. So I was thinking, once I have everything on my platform looking perfect, and once I have all the pieces in place, then I'm going to go out and start speaking to some schools about using this as a platform. But what I came to learn, through the last few years in sales is that sometimes the sales cycle might be 6 months or a year. So if you wait until everything is perfect and the I's are dotted and the T's crossed, you're going to be sitting there and you're not going to have that when you launch and you go to go time, you're not going to have the traffic to it. And so that was my experience, that I wasn't able to create enough traffic, and the margins that I was selling things at, it was only going to work at a really high volume. So I wasn't able to kind of get that volume up. But as I've learned in having worked at Innovation Factory and worked with so many companies, you learn a lot from failure as well. So it didn't kind of get me down too much, but it taught me a lot of things that help me now in some of the companies that I'm working with.
Great. Thanks for explaining.
Sure.
I think that's all the questions. We still have most of the participants on the call, so there's time for one or two questions for Randy if you want to loop back to any of those tools if you missed anything. But Randy, those tools are amazing. It's so many valuable points, and just even even though I know about Canva, when I realized that you just created your flow chart for the presentation out of Canva, I was like, wow, like what a time-saving tool, right? To 15 minutes, you got that done, and it looks so good. So.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer in, I don't want to say stealing things in the wrong way, but I'll I even have a couple tools for either stealing like screenshots or pulling things in graphic wise. Maybe there's a tiny bit of a gray area there, but I find I just when, especially for probably most of the people on this call, you don't have time to do things perfectly, or to kind of, or hire somebody else out to do it perfectly. So sometimes getting it to 90% is enough to kind of get it going and move it forward. And so even if you're using some of these tools imperfectly, or in fits and starts, it's worth it just to kind of try them, play with them a little bit. And it is surprising how many of them have a free aspect to them, that when you're a startup or an entrepreneur or a small business, it takes a bit of time to hit that paid category. And so you can get away with using the tool for a year or two. With our HubSpot accounts, via partners, we've been using it for years, and we don't have any of the paid tools function. We're just looking at that now to take our email marketing, shifting it over to HubSpot, and then we're going to be paying $50 or $60 a month. But we were already paying that for MailChimp anyway, so it's not really any extra cost. But yeah, leverage the free stuff as much as you can before you pay for those premium features that you might not need, or at a smaller scale, you can do things manually or on your own to start with. So.
Absolutely. Perfect. No, I fully agree. It's people wait for things to be perfect, but realistically, every business is constantly evolving. And, a few comments have come in. No more questions that I've noted, but just a few thank yous and great presentation, Randy. So thank you so much. And good friend of ours, Vern. Shout out to Vern. Hi, Vern. He Adrienne and I use this too, but he said he talked about R&D, research and development, or sometimes it's rip off and duplicate, right?
Exactly.
Adrienne and I
Very
in the
good.
office often say rob and duplicate.
There you go.
When it's ethical, right? When
Yeah.
it's reasonable, but
Yeah.
not reinventing the wheel sometimes.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and also just, I think I have a slide on here still if it's going. Oh yeah, so one last call to action, I guess, is that email me if you want a PDF version of the slide deck. I can get that to you. So that's I'm moving you from see, think to doing something. So if you email me, or if you send me a LinkedIn message, at least that's something that I want to be able to offer back to anyone that found it valuable. So yeah, please check it out. But most of those links, you just type in any of those the titles of those tools, and you get them pretty easily as well.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll give people some time to copy down that.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just leave
email address.
that slide up there for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing I'll plug real quick too is a couple more webinars this week. Adrienne is moderating one tomorrow afternoon, Thursday at 2:00, on health and wellness as the topic. So we've noticed a lot of our business owner clients, well, every one of us who isn't dealing with some degree of anxiety right now. So a little bit of a talk tomorrow afternoon on health and wellness, especially when you're working from home. And then on Friday, we have a business professional joining us who will be talking about dealing with uncertainty, and how do you deal with uncertainty and change and volatility, and all that anxiety that we have as a business owner. And it sounds like a negative topic, but he's actually going to talk about how do you turn this volatility and uncertainty into a positive, and how do you come out even stronger at the end of this economic downturn and this pandemic. It's uncharted times, but there are some best practices in business that he'll talk about. So if you haven't seen that, feel free to email the Enterprise Center, and we'll register you for it. It'll be posted on our Facebook as well. So yeah, some great questions. Randy, just you might see the chat and the Q&A, just a couple more. Thank you very much. And Randy, I'm really grateful to you. You've I don't know if people realize this, but you volunteered your time to do this. You know, it's your own time, the preparation. It's really sincerely appreciated that you're community minded enough to share some of your talents with the 25 people that were on the call today. So I'm grateful for that. I do see a couple more questions, just double check. Okay, just a couple more thank yous in the Q&A. So we're I think we're good. There's time if anybody else has one last question, but otherwise I'll let Randy have any parting thoughts, and we'll wave goodbye in just a second or two.
Yeah, it's Rob, and want to thank Adrienne for helping us in getting us some of the pieces set up for the webinar today, and Rob for staying connected. I just a quick kind of side note. I had been living in Hamilton for the last number of years and just moved to St. Catharines in November to be closer to my siblings and to my mom and family, so I could, visit them more often. But haven't been able to visit in the last few months, but it's still been it's been great being in St. Catharines, and I'm really looking forward to the times when we can get to those networking events and in-person things. But I just really encourage anyone on the call today to keep plugging in, keep asking questions in the webinars that are coming up, and stay connected and insinuate yourself into conversations that will build your network, and in the end will lead to great connections with people.
Great advice, great last thoughts. And yeah, when I saw your slide, Randy, with so it says we can all just send our drone robots to events now. Randy, when I saw your slide with some pictures, I think it was on Hootsuite, and it was at a couple networking events. So like that just feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, exactly.
It was just I think it's today. No, yesterday was 2 months ago. I was at Brock University on March 12th for a networking event, and I was a speaker at an event they had, and there were 50, 60 people there, and that's the day it was that the pandemic was declared and the basketball league canceled the season, and at that time it just felt like we'll be working from home for a week or two and then we'll get back to normal. And now it's like, okay, how many more months will we be working from home? When can I get my hair cut, and those sorts of things, right? So I can imagine. I can relate with what you're saying. You moved to St. Catharines hoping to see your parents more, and you might as well be in, I don't know, pick a city anywhere, right? Yeah. So
it's all good.
Yeah, it sounds like though we'll be able to start having barbecues and smaller social gatherings soon. I think the province will be announcing that Thursday based on well, hopefully. We're all hoping. So I don't know anything, but we're all hoping. So yeah. All right. Well, I think we're gonna wrap up here. I want to say thank you to everybody for joining us. Adrienne and I are working very hard to organize a whole bunch of webinars like this. We have I think 8 left for May, and then we'll have 8 to 10 or 12 in June as well. And if you have any suggestions or interest in topics, just let us know that way too. So Randy, I think we'll end it here. And like I say, I'm really grateful for your time, and look forward to chatting again soon, if that's all right.
Sounds great.
What are you doing there? You taking a screenshot to send,
I
or what?
was doing that. I was gonna move my slides back so I can have something different on my slide when I take this shot. So I got to figure out how to. It seems to be frozen up. So
Oh
let's see
no.
here. Oh, here we go. Let me just do that now. See, so I can post on LinkedIn afterwards and show us on the screen here. So
Beautiful. I won't go anywhere just while you're
perfect.
taking our
Okay,
picture.
perfect. There you go.
All
We're
right.
good.
Beautiful. All right. We'll see you on LinkedIn, Randy.
Okay, take care, everyone.
All right.
Bye
Thanks,
bye.
everybody. Bye for now.